You probably think you're in complete control of your decisions and thoughts, but how often are they guided by something else, something you don't even notice occurring deep within your mind? Strange things that are hardwired into all human minds, thinking errors that influence your day-to-day thinking and you can turn off or delete from your brain. These errors are known as cognitive biases. Cognitive biases are the product of the human brain's attempt to cope with the overwhelming amount of information we encounter daily, and its limitations in processing and storing data. These biases are mental shortcuts that help us make quick decisions and understand the world, and they stem from the personal experiences and preferences, allowing us to prioritize and process data efficiently. For instance, cognitive biases can cause us to react differently to information presented with positive or negative connotation, a phenomenon known as the framing effect. Every cognitive bias is there for a reason, mainly to save our brains time or energy. And if you look at them by the problem they're trying to solve, it becomes a lot easier to understand why they exist, how they're useful, and the mental errors that they introduce. Over 200 cognitive biases have been identified so far, which can be classified according to the general mental challenge that they are attempting to address. These challenges include the overload of information in our world, the lack of meaning in our surroundings, the need for quick decision-making, and the necessity of picking what needs to be remembered. For a more in-depth exploration of cognitive biases, you can explore Buster Benson's book, Why Are We Yelling? The Act of Productive Disagreement. Cognitive biases are just mind tools, useful in the right context and harmful in others. They are the only tools we've got, and they are even pretty good at what they are meant to do. Unfortunately, cognitive biases can be very harmful in some situations. Biases become especially problematic in healthcare settings, as lives are at stake. As medical practitioners often face high levels of stress, time constraints, and the need to juggle multiple tasks, the likelihood of biases increases. While health professionals always aim for top-quality care, the fast-paced nature of their days can sometimes lead to unconscious influences in patients' interactions and care delivery. This, in turn, can affect the fairness and quality of healthcare, potentially leading to errors in diagnosis, treatment decisions, and overall patient outcomes, and the consequences are even more serious when patients are directly involved. For example, a 2011 study found that Black and Hispanic patients were less likely than white patients to receive pain medication and more likely to receive lower doses of pain medication despite the higher pain scores. Current literature is limited in terms of accurately describing the prevalence and significance of specific biases in medicine. However, by comparing the results of different studies, we have estimated that among the numerous cognitive biases, there are 3 that stand out as particularly prevalent among physicians, nurses, and biomedical practitioners, posing significant risk to healthcare. First, confirmation bias. We are drawn to details that confirm our own existing beliefs. Confirmation bias involves selecting and interpreting evidence that aligns with one's beliefs and neglecting evidence that contradicts them. This implies that diagnosticians often refuse to consider alternative diagnosis once an initial diagnosis has been established, even if the lab results or the perspective of the patient contradicts it. Second, availability bias. We notice things that are already primed in our memory or repeated often. In a medical context, this implies that a physician that has recently missed a diagnosis of a pathology may be prompt to perform excessive CT scans in search for that same pathology in low-risk patients, leading to overdiagnosis. Third, overconfidence. In order to act, we need to be confident in our ability to make an impact. However, most of this confidence is usually overconfidence. Healthcare professionals may have an inflated opinion of their diagnostic ability, meaning that the confidence in their judgments does not align with the accuracy of these judgments, which may lead to subsequent errors. Then, how can we debias ourselves and mitigate the effect of bias in our practice? Becoming aware of our biases and recognizing their impact through bias teaching sessions is the first step towards enhancing our clinical decision-making. It's difficult to remember the more than 200 biases there are. However, if you want to start making a difference in your own life, we provide you with a set of simple rules to help you identify bias in others and in yourself. As we initially said, our brains have evolved to cope with 4 major challenges from which biases arise. First, as information overload sucks, we filter a lot. So we only notice things that change, things that are weird, things that repeat themselves often, and things that we already know. But some of this information may be valuable. Therefore, periodically question whether you might be filtering out something important. Second, as lack of meaning is confusing, we fill in the gaps with stereotypes, constructed stories, and stuff we already know. We simplify information or we simply reject it as false. Therefore, when forming conclusions, try to distinguish between what you know and what you assume. Third, as we need to act fast to not lose our chance, we assume we are right, we assume we can do anything, we assume that the easier and immediate the better, and we focus on things we have already started and we avoid irreversible decisions. Therefore, be cautious of jumping to conclusions, especially in situations where quick decisions are not required, and take your time to gather and evaluate evidence. Fourth, and last. As we cannot remember everything, we save space by keeping what we think are the important examples or details. We generalize based on stereotypes, and we forget information that we can find later in Google or in other sources. Therefore, recognize that your memory can reinforce errors and biases, and when recalling information, consider whether it aligns with facts or if it's a product of biased memory. In any case, remember that cognitive biases are part of our cognitive toolkit, and with self-awareness, we can navigate them more effectively. Accept that biases won't disappear completely, and instead, focus on improving your understanding of them and working to minimize their influence on your decisions. Nevertheless, nowadays there's a trend in healthcare towards digitalization. Whether it is evolving or suffering a transformation is up for debate, but it is clear that we are slowly handing over more and more of our decisions to algorithms. Therefore, what happens when the cognitive biases that were once confined within the human staff of healthcare institutions break free from those physical confines and project onto the very core of these medical algorithms?
Bias in AI within the healthcare sector is a really serious concern, because it can directly jeopardize the safety and lives of human beings. If algorithms retain bias, they could exacerbate existing healthcare inequalities by offering unequal care to marginalized groups. This may result in misdiagnosis or inappropriate treatments for certain demographics, compromising patients' outcome and thus its safety. Additionally, unfair AI outcomes can undermine trust in the healthcare system, leading to legal and unethical issues such as lawsuits and regulatory penalties. In recent literature, AI bias is commonly categorized into two sources: data-driven bias and algorithmic bias. Data-driven bias occurs when the issue originates from the datasets used to train AI algorithms, shaping their decision-making. This bias is often rooted in the weird profile of participants in human research, making the data not representative of the diverse population. Biases related to ethnicity, gender, or ancestry are noticeable, but those tied to socioeconomic status or sexual orientation are more challenging to identify without explicit metadata. These data gaps can lead to unfair outcomes, especially in fields like healthcare, where socioeconomic factors play a significant role in the results. The other source of bias is algorithmic bias, which occurs when a machine is trained with unevenly distributed categories, meaning some groups have more examples than others. For instance, if an algorithm is predominantly trained on 80% healthy pictures and only 20% diseased pictures, it might incorrectly assume that all new pictures belong to the healthy category, perpetuating the bias from the training data. This complexity makes it difficult to accurately assess the algorithms. To address this training bias, we can use the F1 score, which considers both precision and recall, providing a better understanding of the model's performance in such situations. Additionally, techniques like shuffling labels, creating separate loss functions for different groups, or setting thresholds can be applied to prevent consistently misclassifying any specific group. These strategies can decrease bias and enhance fairness and reliability in AI systems. However, what about the regulatory agencies? What role do they play in addressing this issue? Regulations are also crucial in shaping the future of AI, especially in healthcare. The European Union, for example, has put forth the European AI Act to oversee high-risk AI systems in this sector. While it's not a law yet, once approved, this act will set clear rules for developing AI responsibly. It seeks to strike a balance between innovation and ethics, promoting fair and safe AI practices in healthcare. The main points of the act are: first, data and privacy. The AI system must comply with data protection laws like GDPR and promote privacy-focused technologies. Second is about transparency and accountability. AI developers need to provide clear documentation about the system operations so that the user can understand AI interactions. The third point is about robustness. The developed AI systems must be accurate and resilient against errors or biases. The fourth point is about human oversight. Ensure that the person can intervene and override AI decisions, particularly in critical situations. And the fifth point is about enforcement and penalties, such as including fines to enforce regulations and encourage compliance by businesses and organizations. Supporting the European AI Act is not restricting our options, it's a dedication to creating a future where healthcare AI benefits everyone, regardless of their background or their circumstances. It's about preserving patient trust, ensuring data privacy, and promoting innovation responsibly. Great! After all these explanations, what are the actions we should do to create an unbiased AI healthcare system? Well, you can start by using representative data to ensure a diverse training dataset so that the AI predicts accurately for various demographic groups. Try to make transparent algorithms so that the healthcare professional can understand how the AI system is making the decisions. Then, test and validate the AI within in silico clinical trials to ensure the results of the algorithm don't reflect bias. And finally, follow the European AI Act regulations and guidelines to create the best documentation for high-risk AI systems. And remember, stay debiased.